live from Taipei, Taiwan. We have today the wonderful Vivian Wang.
Hi.
Vivian is a
Welcome.
teacher trainer. What is your exact title, Vivian?
ELT trainer.
I just I just think of you as
Nice.
superstar, so I always forget your exact
It's
title.
ELT trainer. Thank you.
She is an ELT trainer based in Taipei, Taiwan. Travels all over the country. And you're also a university teacher as well,
Yes,
right?
I've been teaching in Shih University in Taipei for 7 years now.
And we're just so happy
Fantastic.
to have you with us. Tell us about your presentation today. Will I take you over to the slide? What are you going to be talking about? We know, but
Okay.
hang on, everybody.
Uh,
We're going to over to Vivian's room.
Woo!
Okay.
okay.
Tell us about your presentation.
Okay. So, uh, are you going to say something after I speak, or I'll just take it
Yeah.
over? Oh, okay.
Well, we'll say a
Well,
little something more. Yeah.
okay. Hello everyone. It's an honor to be here with so many amazing teachers. I want to thank iTDi and gallery teachers, especially Chuck, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be here to share some ideas with you. And today I'm going to talk about teach English within a framework of 21st century skills. And I will try to keep today's session as interactive as possible. So please don't hesitate to share your ideas into the chat box.
All right. We're ready and we're excited. I've been excited all day knowing that you're going to be here. And Jason, thanks again for being with us all the way from Paris.
It's a
Vivian, we're
pleasure.
going to,
Happy to be here and enjoy everyone.
all right. We're going to get out of your way. We're in the background in case you need us. Just let us
Okay,
know.
thank you.
Thanks, Vivian.
Okay,
Over
see
to
you
you.
later.
All right.
Well, thank you everyone. I would like to thank you all for being here with me. As you can see that my topic is teach English within a framework of 21st century skills. If you've been to, if you were in or if you watched Barbara's session, she pointed out a very important point that is, in the 21st centuries, we as English teachers, the most important thing to do is teach English. And I strongly agree with that. So today I'm going to talk about how we can incorporate creativity, communication, critical thinking, collaboration into our lessons. And I'm also going to talk about inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning is a step to new territory for many teachers, and it encourages students to find answers by themselves. So I'm not going to talk about what inquiry-based learning is yet. I would like you to take a look at this slide and think of this. Every minute on the internet, how many data is generated, how many voice calls, how many tweets, how many blog posts, how many emails sent, how many instant conversations are happening. Well, before you guess the missing numbers, I would like you to type in the chat box and tell me which one do you think has the highest number. Skype? Maybe. Any other answers? Twitter. Instant communications. Yeah, think about how many you send a day, right? Well, now please feel free to guess the missing numbers. It's just for fun. Can you guess how many voice calls are happening every minute in the world on the internet? Well, Matthew, you can put the numbers in because we don't know which one you're guessing about. So can you put the numbers in, for example, like 5,000 tweets or 1 billion instant conversations so that people will know which one you are guessing? I'm sorry. Chuck loves to tweet, right? Okay, now I'm going to thank you everyone for guessing. Now I'm going to reveal the answer. The answer changes every day, but I try to get the most updated result for you. And I'm going to reveal the answer and let you take a look at it. Okay. So as language teachers, we are well placed in building skills of effective communication. 21st century communication adds a broader sense to this concept because communication in 21st centuries is faster than ever before. We can reach more people instantly. In 21st century communication has no geographical boundaries. So that is why communication is very important to us. But teaching in the 21st century skills is not all about using technology. However, the main form of communication in the 21st century is digital. So now I would like to share with everyone about this. What technology do your students have, and do they use it or can they use it to communicate? Please type your sharing into the chat box. Yes, there are more emails than tweets, because if you think that way, using email is still what most people do at work. So emails is so far, last time I checked, is still the highest. It still has the highest number. Am I moving too fast? Does anyone want to share about this slide, about what technology your students have, or do they use it to communicate? Just to let us know a little bit about your current teaching situation. Everything but letters. That's not a surprise to know. Thank you, Theodora. Mark Brown in Barcelona pointed out that your teenagers, they don't send emails. I think not just teenagers, also even college students, they don't like to use emails anymore because instant conversations is so convenient. WhatsApp, okay. Social networking websites, emails rarely. Okay, now once again, teaching in the 21st century is not all about using technology, but using digital tools allow teachers to add variety and stimulate motivation because our students are different from when we were students. So now I would like you to share with everyone about what kind of digital tools are you using now, or what equipment, what facilities does your school have? Wow, Sana said we have all mentioned on the slide. And Sana, um, do you get to use it every day? Do your students get to use them very often? Or is there any particular equipment that you think that is most useful for your current teaching situation or for your students? Or is there anything that's not on the slide, but you are using it, or your school has that? Monique said just a computer lab. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing. We will get back to that later. I just want to get you started to think about your current teaching situation with your the relationship between you and the digital tools you are using. So in the following 40 minutes, I'm going to talk about how we can integrate 21st century skills in our lessons and how does inquiry-based learning actually work in class. I would like to start with critical thinking. Critical thinking is a kind of art. It's the art of analyzing and evaluating thinking with a view to improving it. And like any kind of art, it takes time and a lot of practices to be good at it. So our students will need a lot of time and practices to be good critical thinkers. So I would like to give you a very simple example. Imagine you are going to teach your students about life science, and the topic is fear. In more traditional teaching, people tend to think that young children have little capacity little capacity of using critical thinking skills. However, there are simple things that we can do to help our students, especially young children. For example, we can ask questions that have many answers whenever possible, or you can ask your students opinions about things and then ask them why they think that way. So I'm going to try that with you. And the topic is fear. So my first question for you is, please tell me, what is fear? Facing the unfamiliar. Thank you, Jason. Ben Stevens said, a rational anxiety about a future unknown. And do we have Ken Wilson here? Fear is a dark room. Okay, now let's move on to my second question. I want you to tell me what you are afraid of. Let me go first. I am afraid of asking a question during a webinar and no one answers it. Well, apparently you've already helped me overcome my fear. So please keep doing that. So now it's your turn to tell me what you are afraid of. Don't be shy. Be honest. Hi, Tatiana. Mark Brown is afraid of heights and spiders. Monique is afraid of water. Bad men. I am afraid of bad men too. Oh, Theodora said she's afraid of loneliness. You are not alone, Theodora. We are all here with you. I think you can. A sea of bored faces. That's the fear that every teacher has, right? Okay, now I really enjoy the sharing, but we need to move on to my next question. My next question is about your current teaching situation. When you encounter a new tool, new teaching tool, okay, if you are not teaching anymore, it can be anything that have any new tools that exist in your life. What are you afraid of and what keeps you from using it? Sana said whether it can meet my goal. Does that mean you are not sure whether using this new tool will help you reach your goal? So you will be afraid? Is that right? Brian B says lack of training. So Brian, if someone can give you the training that you need, you will feel comfortable of using any kind of new tools. Okay, that makes sense. Chuck said, I'm afraid it won't work. What do you mean by that? Can you be more specific? Hmm. Well, Theodora, I don't know you very well, but I'm actually very surprised to find that you said you're afraid of experimenting, because I thought the way you make me feel is that you are bold, you are strong, you're not afraid of trying new things. Right, what Chuck just described, it can be a bit embarrassing, right, if you're in front of your students or in front of teachers. Yeah, Judy said she's not afraid of trying new things, which is good. We hope all the teachers can be like you. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing. I need to move on to my last question. For the last question, you can pick the fear that exists in your teaching life, or you can pick the fear that in your personal life. It's up to you. So please tell me this. How can you overcome the fear you have? For example, Brian mentioned about training. Yeah, Chuck said my students usually fix the problem for me. So your students help you overcome your fear. You're very lucky. Confronted. Just be brave, right, Mark? Yeah. Gain confidence by practice and knowledge, Sana. Thank you. Mm. Thank you, Mark. Okay, thank you, everyone. Time is short, so I have to move on, but thank you all for sharing. Now, let's stop and think. What we just did is just a very small example for you. So how does inquiry-based learning actually work in class? The 2 points that I would like to mention first. Number one is wonder out loud. What I mean here is when we introduce new topics or new stories, new vocabulary, anything, no matter what you're going to introduce to your students, as long as it's new, encourage your students to ask questions, to think of questions and speak up. Ask them to ask their own questions. Curious students are inquirers, and curiosity is what we want to develop. Actually, children normally they have natural curiosity, but curiosities can be developed in your students if you are curious too. And the second point, let student inquiry lead the lesson. Well, please don't get me wrong. I'm like Barbara. I believe teachers should have total control of how each lesson goes. But my point here is when we introduce something new to our students, if we encourage, we invite our students to ask their own questions, they will be more motivated during the learning process because they will feel like they want to find answers for their own questions. So the learning process is not just learning what teachers want to teach them, but also during the process, they can also find their own answers. Or you can use KWL chart to help you. You can use the first two columns before you teach a new topic, and use the last column to wrap up. Now I'm going to give you another example. Imagine you are going to teach used to structure. I break it down into stages. Stage 1, get students thinking about the past. You can ask your student questions like, what sport did you play when you were a child? Or when you were younger, if your students are still children, what did you like when you were a child? So my question for you is, please tell me, what tools did you use in the past? Anything. It doesn't matter if you just use it today or yesterday. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you are still using it. Just type anything that comes to your mind. Tell us anything that you used. Photos? Jason said photos. Cool. Like you use it like flashcards? KWL stands for Ken Wilson London. Thank you. I never thought about that. Badminton? Julie says badminton. Cool. Well, you are more creative than I thought, which is good. Now let's move on. Imagine in your real classroom, you ask each student to tell you something about their past, and you put all the sentences on the whiteboard and put their name next to it. Stage 2, introduce the structure used to by talking about the sentences on the board or using an example of your own. Now, if you don't live in New York City, you can use this one. You can tell your students, when I was a child, I lived in New York City. But if you do live in New York City, you can just change a place. Because it's easier for young children to realize that you are telling them something that's not true. For example, in my case, my students know I live in Taipei. Your students know where you live. You probably live very close to their apartments or houses. So it's easier for young children to relate to and understand the concept of used to. And then you can tell your students, I used to live in New York City. So your students will, hopefully, they will understand that this is something that's not true anymore. And then stage 3 is you ask your students to look at the sentences on the board. Imagine there are a lot of sentences from your students and has name next to each sentence. And ask them to look at the sentences on the board again and check if the statement is no longer true. For example, imagine there's a Lisa in your class. And in stage 1, she said, I liked cake when I was a child. And you can ask Lisa, Lisa, do you still like cake? And maybe Lisa will say, yes. And then you ask the whole class, so can we rewrite the sentence by using used to? Hopefully, your students will say no. And imagine there's a Vivian in your class, and you ask Vivian, Vivian, do you still play with Barbies? And Vivian said no. And then you can tell your class, guys, we can use this sentence. We can say Vivian used to play with Barbies, but now she doesn't. So you invite your students to look at those sentences about their classmates. It's fun because it's about someone they know. It's about their classmates, and see if they can change the sentence by using used to. That is one way for you to check if your students really understand the correct usage of this structure. And then my question for you is, I want you to type something that you used to do in your classes. I used to da 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 in my classes. Can be anything. Please share with us. Mark says, I used to talk too much. Are you sure about that? Mm, so you don't talk too much anymore? Priscilla said you used to draw, so you don't draw anymore, or you use other tools? Thank you, Branka. I will check it out after my session. Ken Wilson said, I used to drill in my classes. You don't do it anymore. Is it because you're not teaching anymore, or if you're still teaching, you won't do it anymore? Monique said, I used to yell in my classes, but you don't do it anymore, which is very good. Sana said, you used to sing. You don't sing anymore? Theodora said, I used to yell. We have a few yelling teachers. Used to yell teacher. Okay, Mark said, I limited. Brian B said, I used to dance too much in my classes. So you, like Brian, are you like Mark? You limit your dancing time right now? Yeah. Julie, I used to be like you. I used to feel super uncomfortable if there was silence. It took me a while to understand that it's okay to be silent for a short while, and sometimes it's good for my classes. It took me a while to understand that. Oh, Sana said I sing more. That's great. Okay, thank you everyone. I'm sorry that I don't have time to finish reading all of your responses, but I will definitely go back and read it after my sessions. Let's move on. And stage 4, you can wrap up this teaching, this structured teaching thing with a student-centered activity. You can make a very simple questionnaire. This is just a small sample for you. And ask your students to use this questionnaire to walk around and interview their classmates to see if they can find someone who used to, or you can ask your students to make their own questionnaire and to have more fun with it. Okay. So let's stop a while and think. One way that you can do to develop students' critical thinking ability is to ask your students what they know about a subject and then help them to learn more. Even when you are teaching, sometimes people feel it's kind of boring grammar structure, you can still use that method. And also, how does inquiry-based learning actually work in class? Facilitate student-centered learning. The find someone who used to activity is a very typical, very simple student-centered activity. Why do we want to facilitate student-centered activities? Because when you do that, you are giving each student an active role. And we teachers, we become facilitators. We walk around, we guide the learning, we make sure that every student has a voice. And as a result, I believe you will find your students' participation and dialogues are maximized. Okay? The two more things I want to point out is another way to develop your students' critical thinking ability is to lead your students to discover other ways of performing a task. And how does inquiry-based learning actually work in class? One more thing I would like to share with you is take time to reflect. If you give your students some time to reflect, your students will be more aware of what they've learned and how they've learned it. And if they're more aware of this, they will be more efficient and more confident in their learning. One way to do that is you can do a project with your students. Why? Projects rely on teamwork, so your students can learn to appreciate the need for cooperation, and they can learn to appreciate individual contribution for the success of the whole project. And also, project generally involves a balance of skills. So it will be a good skills practice for your students. And also they can integrate the language knowledge you just taught them. And it caters for different styles and abilities because when your students are working on projects, there is a there are a there are many different kinds of role that suits different abilities, different inclinations. So each student can find their stage to shine. So it caters different styles and also encourage our students to be more independent in their learning. Okay, thank you, Judy. Now I want to give you an example. Imagine you've been teaching your students a topic and it's about fear. And oh, sorry, the slides is a bit wrong, but it's okay. You've taught two reading texts. One is informational, one is fictional. And the grammar structures that you focused on when you teach this topic are past unreal, conditional, if only, I wish structures, and you've done listening and speaking practices with your students about suggesting solutions, and you've taught vocabularies around the topic about fear, for example, like alert, respond, threat. These are just to give you a little bit of background of the example. And your students have been learning around this topic for at least 6 to 8 learning hours. And you can, before I show you the project example, I would like to point out another thing that we can do to train our students' critical thinking ability. That is, set up choices which involve your students in making decisions. For example, let's take a look at this project. You can ask your students to conduct an interview. Choose a kind of fear you want to focus on because you've been talking about fear with your students for weeks. So you can let your students choose a kind of fear they want to focus on in groups. And step one is decide who and what. Decide who means students need to decide their role, who is going to be the interviewer, who is going to be the interviewee, or one student can be the interviewer and the other student can be a kind of fear. It doesn't matter. They can use their creativity to design their interview. And decide what means they need to decide what they want to put in the interview, what information they can add to make this interview more interactive, more interesting. And step two is, of course, practice with your partner. And students at this step, because it's an interview, so this is the time they can add movements, gestures, or maybe little simple props, anything they like. And step three is try to memorize most of your parts because in the end, step four, they need to perform it for the class. And step three is red is because I think it is a very important step for students to reflect and integrate the language skills and knowledge you've taught them. And then they will go to step four to show the whole class the final product. Okay, so this is just an example. If you are preparing or doing projects like this, what can you do to incorporate technology into your classes? For example, projects can be, I put the easiest answer on this slide. Projects can be research on the internet. Your students can search information on the internet in order to make the interview or the projects they are doing more informative, more interesting. And what are other ways that you can think of that your students can use technology or practice using technology by doing the projects? Thank you, Sana. Renka, thank you. They can present the projects in PowerPoint. True, so that we have a chance to teach our students how to use PowerPoint, which is very important. Even some university students in Taiwan cannot use it properly. So it's a very good point. Make a video. Brinka, very good. You can make a video. And also, if you make a video, you can, if there's a web page, web space in your school, we can upload the video for the whole school to see, right? Record and share digitally. We can be cooperative. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Judy. Brian B said students can make it into an interactive whiteboard presentation. Chuck said we can make surveys with SurveyMonkey, then shared on FB and Twitter. Or we can, okay, imagine we are all teaching in the same school, and we're all going to do this project together. Imagine we have a shared web space, so we can upload our students' videos, and then, as Chuck suggested, we can make a survey, and we can ask the whole school. We can ask each student to go online, watch the videos, and make comments. Right? I think it will be a very good social media training. Thank you, Barbara. Sana says through digital storytelling, they can raise awareness on global issues and can raise their voice. Thank you, Sana. That's a beautiful point you made. Now let's move on. Have you watched Jose's session? She showed us how to make your goals smart, how to reach your goals that way. But we can also make your projects smart. So it will be a good review if you watched Jose's session. I hope you've watched it and you still remember S means specific. Now I want you to tell me, what does it mean when you are working on projects with your students, or when you are helping your students preparing for projects? What does it mean to make your projects specific? Clear goals, Branka, thank you. We need to have specific goals. Students need to know clearly about the goals. And Mark says stay on topic. And Theodora said give the right instructions. Thank you, Theodora. Our students need specific instructions. They need to have clear steps of how to do it. What about, thank you everyone, what about N? N means measurable. What does it mean in terms of making a project? Set time limit. Thank you, Theodora. Time measurement. Time management. Okay. Thank you, Sana. Any other ideas about make your projects measurable? Mhm. Being able to assess the project. Thank you, Branka. Well, actually, projects can be assessed. One simple way to do it is to help our students prepare portfolio to demonstrate their projects, or digital portfolios will be even better, to show what and how our students have learned. What about A? A means achievable. What does it mean? Making your projects achievable. Thank you, Judy. Give clear explanation what is expected. Make your goals come true, Sana. Thank you. Students will often come up with very ambitious ideas for project, which, although exciting, can be impractical sometimes because of difficulty, availability of relevant material, or the time needed to complete them. I'm not saying that we should kill their imagination or creativity, but one of the aspects of project work is students feel satisfaction when they look at their final product. So we as teachers, we need to stop um, ideas that are not practical, or if you see this won't work, we need to stop that and direct them into the correct direction. Okay. And what about R? R in Josette's session, she said it's relevant, but here what I mean is real. So what does it mean when I say make your projects real? Yes, Barbara, that's what I wanted to say, that we can redirect in a way and they can still incorporate their creativity. That's what we do. That's that's why they need us, right? Okay, Ayat related to real life tasks. A project is a good opportunity to get away from the sometimes artificial world of the coursebook into the real world around students. Students can think of ways of bringing the real world into their projects. No matter what kinds of project they're working on, it's easier for students to try to do that and make the learning more meaningful. And what about T, time bound? What does it mean, make your projects time bound? Thank you, Judy. Barbara says, or else projects are never over. Uh, it's very easy for a project to grow and grow, taking up more and more lesson time. It's usually better for students to feel that there's not enough time. Suitable amount of pressure often gets the best results. That's what I always find. So you can, if you haven't tried it, you should try it. Give your students certain amount of, just not too much. If you give them too much pressure, they will just give up. So just give them suitable amount of pressure. You will see that you can motivate them to, you can bring out the best of them. Okay, thank you everyone. So this is Make Your Project Smart. Thank you all for sharing. And let's wrap up a little bit. Simple ways of training students to think critically. You can use questions, ask questions that have many answers whenever possible. Choices, you can set up choices which involve your students in making decisions. And strategies here means we need to lead our students to discover other ways of performing a task. Opinion and reasons, ask your students about things and why they think that way. You can use KWL chart. If you don't want to use KWL chart, you can remember to ask your students what they know about the topic or about subject and help them to learn more. Okay? So what is inquiry-based learning? Inquiry-based learning generally involves students tackling real-world questions and issues, testing ideas within a collaborative setting, teach students how to solve problems and create solutions, and help students to develop deeper understanding of content knowledge. And ultimately, we want all of our students to become more confident and more independent in their learnings. Now, I would like you to think, I hope I didn't ask too many questions in this session. I would like you to share qualities of a creative classroom. What do you think an ideal creative classroom should be? Thank you, Barbara. Relaxed atmosphere, Brinka. Thank you. This is probably one of the most important things. We want our students to be able to relax so they will enjoy learning, enjoy our teaching more. Thank you, Barb. Learners teach too. Thank you, Matthew. And Branka said students are not afraid to make mistakes. Thank you, Branka. Sana said when the students get motivated, they can be creative. True. Motivation is the key. No matter what you want to teach your students or what you want them to be good at, motivation is always very important. Ryan B said enthusiasm. Engaging and motivating to everyone in the classroom. Matthew said art. True. Embracing mistakes. Yes, Barbara, thank you. Julie said a class who can make real change to the world. Thank you, Julie. That's a beautiful point that you just made. Well, I'm sure we can go on and on about this. There are tons of qualities of a creative classroom that we can think of. Well, I picked three, or some of you just mentioned it. Three qualities I would like to share with you is open-ended questions, because they encourage curiosity and creativity. Without fear, you've already pointed that out. When students brainstorm as many ideas as possible without fear of being judged or being wrong. This is very important. And students lead the learning, while teachers still have the total control. The students work together to complete projects or activities you want them to do. And those projects or activities help your students take the information they have learned, take the knowledge you have told them, and present it in a new and creative way. And if you let your students lead the learning this way, it will create a dynamic and creative learning environment for your students. Now we are near the end of this session. I would like to ask you, why do we need to include them in our teaching? But earlier in Barbara's session, she's already basically told us the reason why we need to include them. Well, we can think of what employers look for nowadays, the 7 key skills. But instead of going through this slide, I would like you to watch a short video. It's less than 2 minutes, and Chuck will paste the link for you. And after you finish watching, please send me a message. Let me know you're back, okay? So Chuck, can you paste the video link for us to? Okay, thank you. So everyone, please enjoy this short video, and we'll come back and talk more. Branka, thank you. Thank you, Theodora. Thank you, Sana. I'm glad you like this video. Although it is made in 2012, now I watch it. I've watched this video several times. It's like a constant reminder for me. It's still very powerful. It's still a very powerful reminder for me. The reason why we need to include them. We need to change the way we teach. Thank you, Julie. So the last point I would like to make, I would like to end my session with a quote. It is, no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. Building strong student-teacher relationships is also very important for inquiry-based learning, because it's important to develop a mutual relationship of trust and open communication with your students. In this way, students will begin to look at themselves as partners in learning with their teachers. This gives them a sense of shared responsibilities, and it will help them be good learners. They will be more motivated and they will be more independent. Well, speaking of relationships, it is also very important to maintain a strong relationship between you and iTDi, because iTDi is a place that encourages creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Well, you can also contact me by this email. I put it here on this slide, vivian.wang@oup.com. And you can also find me on Facebook by using that email. I think that's it. I just did my first webinar. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your participation. And thank you for your time. Thank you for
Vivian, that was not your first webinar because you were like a pro. You're so good. You were interactive. I thought you'd done hundreds of webinars for OUP.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
This is my first one.
Chuck, I think you might need to suit up there.
I'm suited up. What Jason means is that.
Sorry, the echo.
Which Jason means you put my headphones on, not put my clothes back on. My headphones.
Button in your buds.
I enjoyed this session a lot.
Vivian, that really was your first webinar, honest?
Yes, it is.
Well, we're just really thrilled that your very first webinar was here in the iTDi Gallery Teachers Summer Intensive.
Yes.
I think we're going to do a winter one. Would you come back and do another? Yeah. For the winter intensive.
Got it.
That would be an honor.
No, seriously, it was really it was a very interactive and just highly engaging first webinar. Wow.
Thank you. So those of you who get to do your teacher training, come to your teacher training sessions in Taiwan, and your university students are pretty lucky. And we're very lucky to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I will remember to tell
tell them we think you're great. We just think you're fabulous. And thank them for letting you come over here today. We're very happy. Hang on, everybody. I'm going to take you back to the lobby. Everybody's still there? How's the weather now, Vivian? Does everybody know that there's a typhoon going on outside Vivian's window at this very moment? And she was worried that the windows were going to bust open and she was going to get blown away.
Yes, because I'm facing the windows. During the whole session, I keep hearing the sound of the wind.
Yeah, when we did the sound check before Vivian had her earbuds in, all I could hear was all this noise in the background. Well, thank you, Vivian. And Vivian's got some props, and
Thank you.
We usually turn off the recording before we play the song as we fade out.